So, Life is Strange returned with episode 4, The Dark Room. Now, after episode 3's cliffhanger of changing the timeline entirely, where you had no choice but to change the timeline, even if you didn't want to, it seems a bit of a letdown that they would just end it pretty much straight away. So basically you spent a day with Chloe finding out how things have changed for her, with her being happy that her parents are together, but obviously being a great burden on them financially and emotionally, and that pretty much you don't explore anywhere else, even though Nathan has a text history with you and you do state that you were in the dark room. Not necessarily the dark room of question, but, you know, a dark room for processing more than likely, rather than being involved in what Nathan is involved in the main plot. And when you do come to a decision, which, spoilers, you do have to decide whether you want to help Chloe end her life or not. And there's just a long delay after you make your decision, so I chose not to, but because you sat around for at least 10 seconds with nothing happening, nowhere to select to continue, looking around the entire room, I felt that I was forced to rewind and change my decision, so that kind of wasn't on for me. I mean, maybe it's to make you feel sad and somber and, you know, sit there for a while, but considering the decision tree didn't appear, I felt like it forced me to rewind, and that just wasn't on for me, that, you know, you were pretty much forced to change your mind by how long it takes, or at least you felt like that. Anyway, on to the glitch of today's episode, which, considering episode 1 we had a glitch, episode 2 we had the glitch of the girl coming through the toilet, episode 3 we had the glitch of my graphics card essentially dying and the graphics card breaking, I guess. I don't know whether it was my graphics card or the in-game graphics engine just breaking. Anyway, episode 4's glitch is, you know how I've pretty much frozen time when rewinding at a decision tree point, and, you know, if you stop rewinding, you press space to continue. Well, from there, I went and broke time entirely, so I rewound. The game was saying, oh, let's explore Nathan's room, even though I had already explored his room. I rewound, and then all of a sudden, I changed my mind for the decision with Warren, so that Chloe wouldn't get a gun, even though she ends up with a gun regardless of your decision overall in the main game. There's no way to prevent her having a gun. So, what we do end up doing is breaking time entirely to save Nathan, so we can actually move around and walk around during that scene, and I found that quite funny. And going back to what they were saying at EGX last year, how they wanted to have it so that you rewound and then rewound and moved a little bit forward and rewound, I noticed that that scene was more than likely the scene with Kate jumping, and that they changed it to freeze time, possibly from watching some Let's Plays and hearing about that theory, because of breaking the time and freezing it, and thought that was a better idea, so that worked out quite well. Of course, unfortunately, I broke the game entirely to make that an actual plausible thing, and I couldn't even rewind, so rechange that, so I had to quit and exit. But it was quite a funny glitch, and I hear other people have had other glitches, like Gassy Mexican had a glitch where he had two of the same plot running at the same time, so, you know, there was one decision tree and another decision tree running unilaterally, which broke the game entirely. Anyway, on to the rest of the game. There are spoilers in this, so beware if you haven't played through. The main plot of this is on finding out who the killer is and where the dark room is. So there's a lot of investigating to do, finding the clues. We already have some clues which were gathered during the alternative timeline, so you never actually see this happening. But what we do have to do is find the missing pieces. So whether you save Kate or not, you go to visit her in the hospital, and it's nice to see her alive and happy, but it's an albeit short scene, and there's not a lot to gather from this. Maybe things change depending on whether you've accidentally killed her bunny, how well you interacted with her, depending on how happy she is, but she still wants to help and wants to get Nathan kicked out for what he did, or at least suffer for his crimes. And depending on whether you've blamed other people or not is how Max obviously responds to the situation. We do note that Victoria has been very happy or sending notes trying to help Kate. I don't know whether this is just to be the popular girl. As she always wants to be the most popular with everyone and liked by everyone. But it does seem at least a little more heartfelt than she comes across in the main game. This could necessarily change depending on how you've reacted with Victoria, but I can't guarantee this because I haven't played through all the possibilities. From here we go on to go and investigate Nathan's room, where obviously I've mentioned what goes on, and you do have to find his phone, which is obviously hidden, but when you come to decoding it, I thought that obviously you were required to decode it, so when I was struggling with the code I did lock it up, because I didn't let it go to the full lockout. 3 attempts locks it out, and obviously that becomes a case where you can avoid doing the situation, and you still end up finding the whole thing regardless. Now, we have been noting that Twin Peaks has been the car to blame, so the fact that Nathan has essentially a similar car, but depending on how observant you were in previous episodes, Twin Peaks was driven by someone else. Heavily spoilers. Now, I've already pretty much given the spoilers, so the fact that it turns out to be Jefferson is less than, hinted. It does want you to chase Nathan with the hints for Nathan being everywhere, but these could just simply be that it is Jefferson planting evidence to blame Nathan so that he will get covered rather than it actually going down that Jefferson is the case. So when you come to solve the crime with the CSI investigations, I was looking to blame Jefferson because obviously I put it together with what he was saying to Kate before she actually jumped and how he was on the phone to someone, which obviously wasn't Nathan because Nathan was in the actual room itself. So there is further involvement beyond Nathan and Jefferson, which from the hints that are going through the game seems to be that perhaps the whole of the family itself, all of the Prescotts are involved, and it's a family industry or a ring involving the Prescotts and Mr. Jefferson and perhaps other Vortex Club members or High Society members, depending on how it pans out. But this could obviously just be, fake spoilers, but there is definitely someone else other than just Jefferson and Nathan, because when Jefferson's on the phone, Nathan's not on the phone. He's in the classroom talking to Victoria. So if it turns out that he was meant to be on the phone to Nathan, this isn't right because he was not there. So he could just simply be a scapegoat. Now, the notes that are planted around the darkroom, they do seem to hint that it is Nathan's parents and that it's a family business. But this could also be that it's simply from Jefferson. It is not clear who actually owns the bunker, although Nathan has the codes, and it states that he has been invited in and shown the business. It is not necessarily the Prescotts themselves, because obviously the Prescotts are chasing the debt for this bunker, so perhaps Jefferson himself has purchased the bunker. This kind of leaves a contradiction, especially with the phone call and the other things that don't quite line up. Maybe they have considered this, maybe they haven't. It remains to be seen. Now, going back to the beginning, where we had the alternate timeline from going to changing the history to save Chloe's father, it could be stated because it states things have an influence on the past, present and future, where we began in the very first episode unconscious near the lighthouse on the beach. So, why were we unconscious? Did we perhaps travel through time simply because of the vortex? Are we just reliving memories? And depending on how you play it out is how the memories were played out. So, obviously it's had an influence and things are just simply always that way. And, you never really changed anything. And the time travel mechanic is a simple way of explaining it and coming to terms with it in your head when you're reliving the memories rather than being, essentially on the brink of death. There are big hints to this, like the double moons and all the other calamities that are going down. And these could also be effects of drugs. So having been drugged and kidnapped to be, tortured and raped by Jefferson, or, photographed, or whatever the hell he is getting up to. The double vision and things like that, and everything could be effects of drugs, the cold, snow, although the birds dying is rather ominous and not really associated with drugs, I guess. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe we see a creature die in the corner and that sparks the whole death of things, or maybe just death on our minds whilst under the influence of drugs has created all of this. So it could all be drug-induced from being in the dark room, or we could be unconscious on the way to the lighthouse, as stated. So is Jefferson going to be near that scene with the tornado, or is that just all drug-induced, or are we inside the tornado, having been hit and knocked unconscious, and simply daydreaming the entire thing? It remains to be seen. Now, do remember that things we've done have an influence, so the train is an influence. Maybe people can get away on the train. Maybe Jefferson escapes on the train. And, maybe we wanted to have the train broken. It remains to be seen whether that should be something that pans out. It should definitely have an influence on the game, because it's stated that it was an influential factor. So we should see some sort of effect from it in the final episodes. Of course, now that the killer is revealed as Jefferson, we have to then bear in mind the whole photographs with Nathan situation again. Being photographed with Nathan, with him burying Rachel's body and all of that. When did this happen? Did this happen originally when Rachel first disappears? Or was it recent? Because there are photographs with Nathan dead with Rachel. Again, this can't be correct with the timeline because it's staged. And the whole fact that Nathan is then photographed burying Rachel, you never see this, but Max and Chloe clearly commentate on it. So clearly there is that photograph, and they never think, well, wait, who's taking this photo? Clearly Jefferson. So is Nathan dead? He was excited to be going to the end of the world party. Or is he wouldn't be unconscious down in the dark room unless he went there afterwards. So he went running to Jefferson after being beaten up to try and get help and then sort the situation out. And then Jefferson maybe did something about Nathan, because perhaps Nathan's temper overcome him and he had to knock him out or something and take him to the dark room. And he's always involved in the photos, so I'm sure he will be in the dark room himself when we regain consciousness for Polarized. Will we have access to her powers? I mean, although Chloe is dead, obviously we have the photograph power, so we could go back to a prior photograph and perhaps change that situation entirely. I know it is stated that there should be at least 3 endings, from what I recall. I don't think it's on the store page anymore, but I'm sure there are multiple endings. So it would be interesting to see how things pan out and how things change. Is it just whether Kate's alive, Kate's dead, or whether you've blamed Nathan or chased Jefferson, and whether I don't know, you couldn't save Chloe, so let's see what sort of influence you can actually make in the final episodes. Either way, things have been building up dramatically, and also whether you end up with Warren or not is another ending, I guess, because he is a bit of a stalker. If you don't notice in certain scenes, he acts like G-Man, hiding, watching, and then disappearing. And whether you've picked up the whole thing in episode 2, where you talk to either his now girlfriend or the one who always wants him, who he really should be with, and he was with in the alternate timeline, who states that he's put a tracker on your car. And it's always funny how he's where you are at all times. And with the tracker on your car, whether he then chases you down to where Jefferson is, depending on whether you've taken your car or not. I'm sure he will be eager to find out what has happened to you, having this tracker ability on you. And who else would come to your aid? I mean, I'm sure that Kate will be eager to text you, and I'm sure that there should have been more response for when she texts you, so you could respond back and say thanks and, keep her involved in the loop, especially when you then find the darkroom. It would have been good to text Kate and say, hey, we found all of this evidence on Nathan and it's here and all of that. And whether you gain access to the darkroom or not should also be an influential factor, because I know that they did offer pretty much the whole worn out keys for if you didn't remember from the previous scene, 542. But it would be interesting to see if there was an alternate not getting inside the dark room. And whether you rewound once you were down there, because I know that maybe they probably prevent that, but once you've unlocked it, could you then accidentally bury yourself underground by rewinding before you even then go into the area? Because maybe they've prevented that as a time gate, but if not, you could potentially glitch the game and break it entirely by shutting Chloe out and then shutting yourself in underground in the dark room. And one final thing is the End of the World party, even though I technically should have had an invite, because I got the invite from the one girl, but not the girl that was writing down the actual invitations, so even adding ourselves to the list, it didn't really make too much difference because they kind of overruled it, so you still had to sneak in anyway. And it would have been nice to see what difference that one made. Probably not a lot, just a little social influence, it's like, oh, well, why did she put you on the name, or why did I put you in the name, I shouldn't have put you on the name, blah, blah, blah. The people in the toilets as well, I mean, there doesn't seem to be a way to rewind and get them out, even though it's heavily hinted that they should. And who is actually in there? Because I couldn't identify any of the main characters that were being involved in such a scene in the toilets. One final thing as well is that Alyssa is always being targeted, and you will know that there are hints around that someone fancies Alyssa and they want her attention, so perhaps by saving her all these times, is it always the same person that's essentially hitting her or throwing these things at her? Maybe it could be that this person is trying to get her attention, and by saving her all these times, she doesn't end up with perhaps a boyfriend, and we've actually not helped her by intervening because he never gets noticed by her. Because he certainly does seem to be going through a lot of effort to hit her with balls, hit her with the things, and go, hey, I'm here. Maybe it doesn't turn out quite so much. And is he in the car that splashes her? It's hard to say. I mean, the car goes back so fast. I know he's probably not the toilet paper assassin, but, maybe he is. I don't think he was. It was a woman's face as far as I remember. But either way, it could just be that that was the case. And who is this person with the missing tablets with cat pictures? Do we ever find this? Because it's been hinted at so much. I'm sure in episode 5 we should at least find this tablet somewhere. Just for closure's sake. So, let's see how episode 5 pans out. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.